And welcome back, options traders. I hope everybody had a great weekend and off to another exciting Monday here in the world of trading. Something that I talk to a lot of traders about is these discussions about trying to explain what appear to be strange coincidences in trading. And so I'll hear a lot of traders who might say, well, because this happened, maybe we hit a retracement level or a moving average, and therefore I saw this result, therefore it caused it. And they never stop to think, are there other explanations? Could it just simply be chance at work? And if you don't take that into account, you're going to be led to different trading strategies and rules that probably have no bearing on anything. They're just going to lead you to bad decisions. So let's go find out some other ways of explaining seemingly strange coincidences in trading. And before we do, as always, please be sure to click like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated and helps to promote the channel. All right, so for example, let's go over to the E-Trade platform. I've got NVIDIA up here, and most of you know you can do a Fibonacci retracement. There's a lot of different Fibonacci types of studies. But basically what you do is you pick a relative low point, left mouse click, you drag your mouse up to the relative high point, left mouse click, and just like magic, you have all of these different levels of potential Fibonacci retracements. Now, without getting into the details, these are coming from the Fibonacci numbers. The 50% is coming from Dow theory, but we have all of these different levels. So notice right here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different levels of which we could approach from below or above. In other words, we could see this level right here as a resistance line. If the candles come from underneath it like they did over here and just magically seem to be resisting off of it. But we can also have them approach from above like they did down here and just magically land right on this line, as if it became some sort of magical support. And so when traders see this, they go, well, this is just way too coincidental to be anything else other than the Fibonacci numbers explain support and resistance levels in trading. Well, before you jump to that conclusion, what I want to do is to show you why you have to be careful when you're dealing with very big sets of potential numbers and all of the various combinations that could occur. And that's really the trick. That's the thing that people just don't understand. So to kick things off, let's start off with a mathematical principle that's sometimes called the pigeonhole principle. And it's quite simple, fairly intuitive, but it's going to make more sense why we need it later. But let's say we have this pigeon house here, and we've got 7 holes on the top, 7 on the bottom. We have 14 different pigeonholes. Well, what the pigeonhole principle says is that if you have 15 pigeons, that one of these holes must contain at least 2 pigeons. All right, well, that's fairly simple because if you tried to avoid it, you could put 1 pigeon here, 1 here, and you could get it up to 14, but then once you have that 15th pigeon, it's got to go into a shared hole. And so that makes a lot of intuitive sense, and this is also where people make their mistakes because they think that you have to get to this ultimate level here before you're starting to see, let's say, some repeats or some what might be coincidences. And the reason for this mistake is that they're overlooking the number of possible combinations. So here's the basics without getting into the details. But for any set of numbers or letters of the alphabet or pigeonholes or anything like that, there are more combinations than there are the actual elements or the things that we're counting. So as a simple example, let's take the numbers 1, 2, 3. This is a set of numbers. We have 3 numbers. Well, how many combinations are there? Well, there's more than 3. We have 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, and 3, 2, 1. So you can see we've got 6 different combinations, even though we have only 3 elements in the set. And so this is the idea, that we have all of these different combinations that people don't account for. And that's what's causing, in most cases, these apparent coincidences. Again, it's just that people aren't accounting for how many possible combinations there actually are. So let's do a little more complicated example. Let's look at repeat letters in words. So how many letters do you need in a word before there's a 50% chance of seeing repeat letters? Now there's 26 letters in the alphabet, so it seems like you'd need long words before having a high probability of seeing repeat letters. So just for this model, we're going to assume that a word isn't necessarily a word you would find in the dictionary. It's just a set of letters. So if we're looking at 5-letter words, pick 5 letters from the alphabet, even if they're repeats, and put them together. Again, doesn't have to be a real word, anything that you can pronounce, but we're just going to call that a word. So once we do that, you would think, just like with the pigeonhole principle, that we'd have to get close to 26-letter words before we'd start seeing repeats. And that's certainly the intuition where people start to make these mistakes, but what they're overlooking is how many combinations you get when you start getting into 5 and 6 and 7-letter words. And that's where they start to spiral out of control, at least relatively speaking. So let's jump over to an Excel spreadsheet and take a look at just how many letters you'd need before you should start seeing repeat letters. Okay, so here is an Excel spreadsheet, and these are the number of letters in a word. So this is a 1-letter word, these are 2-letter words, 3-letter words, and so on. So our longest word we're going to construct is 14 letters long. So with the simplest case of just 1-letter words, there's obviously only 26 possibilities, one of each letter of the alphabet. So if we list those, just A through Z, how many unique letters are there? Well, there's 26. And therefore, you could not have any repeats because each one's only 1 letter long. So the percentage of unique letters would be 100%, and the percentage of repeats would be 0. But watch what happens when we go to 2-letter words. Now there's 676 possibilities. That's just going to take 26 times 26. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. We have 26 ways to choose the first letter, and then we have 26 ways to choose the second. And because they're independent, we would multiply those together. But how many of those are unique? So here we're just going to take 26 times 25. So if we were going to construct a unique word, we would have 26 letters to choose from our alphabet for the first letter, but then we would only have 25 letters to choose from for the second if we didn't want to have repeats. So if there's 676 total words we can create and 650 unique ones, there must be, the difference between them, 26 different words that have repeat letters. So now we've dropped down to 96.2% that are unique, or 3.8% that will have repeated letters. But look what happens as we start moving down the list. The thing is, again, you would think that you'd have to get close to 26 before you'd start seeing repeats. But even down here at 6, if you have a 6-letter word, there's about a 54% chance that they're going to be unique letters, no repeats, and therefore about a 46% chance of seeing repeats, but roughly a 50-50. But now go to 7-letter words, and look at what happens. The odds are now much higher in your favor that you're going to see repeats with only 7 letters. So we're only at about 27% of the number of letters in the alphabet, and yet we're already greater than a 50% chance of getting repeated letters. Look what happens when you go to 8-letter words. Now we've got a 30% chance that they're all going to be different, that they're going to be unique. Therefore, about a 70% chance that we have repeats. So you can see, just going from 7 to 8-letter words, that there's a much greater chance you're going to see repeats. Now, also take a look at this. We can look at the differences. So in this column, I'm taking 96.2 minus 100. In other words, we have dropped off 3.8 percentage points by going from 1-letter words to 2-letter words. So if we graph this, that's what this is right there, look at how sharp that drop-off is right about the 6th and 7th letters. Look at how quickly you go off a cliff, and then you start coming back towards 0. In other words, where there's almost no difference between going from, let's say, 13 to 14-letter words. There are just not going to be big differences because we've pretty much covered all of the combinations. We're so close to 100%. So the main thing is to take from this, again, think back to the pigeonhole principle. You've got 26 letters in the alphabet. Intuitively, it seems like you'd need very long words before you would start seeing repeat letters. And yet we can see that really only after 8-letter words, the odds are highly in your favor, about 70% chance that you are going to see repeats. Now there's a similar problem on a much bigger scale. You've probably seen this one before, kind of a famous statistics problem called the birthday problem. And the question is, how many people do you need in a room before there's a 50% chance that two share the same birthday, not counting the same year? So now you're thinking, okay, there's 365 days in a year, not counting a leap year. So again, how many people would you need in the room before we would have a 50-50 shot that two have the same birthday? Now, going back to the pigeonhole principle, obviously if we had 366 people in a room, we are guaranteed to have at least two that match. And again, this is where most people would think that the answer must lie. You must be pushing very close, or certainly above the halfway point. Certainly more than 180 people before you would start seeing a 50% chance. Well, let's go back to the Excel spreadsheet and take a look at how the math works out. Okay, so now we're back into the Excel spreadsheet, and the math is virtually the same as it was for the number of letters in a word. So here we've got one person in the room, two people in a room, three people in a room, and so on. When we put, let's just say we've got an empty room, we bring one person into the room. Well, there's 365 days out of a year, not counting leap years. This person would be able to have any birthday out of those 365 days. And we're not going to match anybody because he's the only person in the room. So there's a 100% chance that we are going to have some birthday when the first person walks into the room. Now the trick here, what we're going to do is we're going to try to avoid a match. And if we can do that, then if we take 1 minus that probability, it gives us the probability of at least one match. So let's bring a second person into the room. And again, out of 365 days, if we don't want person number 2 to match person number 1, there are only 364 days that we can choose from. And if we take 364 out of 365, we get 0.997. We bring person number 3 into the room. Again, there's still 365 days in a year, but if we don't want person number 3's birthday to match 2 or 1's, then there's only 363 days out of the year that we could select. And 363 out of 365 is 0.995, and so on. So the probability of no match is simply just multiplying these probabilities out. So I take 1 times 0.997, gives me virtually a 100% chance that we're going to have no match. If we put 3 people in a room, gives me 0.992. And so again, if we take 1 minus that, this would be the probability of at least one birthday match. So still very low. But just like with the word problem, take a look at what happens as we start going down the list. Once you hit 23 people, the chances that there are no matches is just under 50%, 0.493. And therefore, the probability of at least one match is 1 minus that, or 0.507. The odds are slightly in our favor that we're going to have 2 people with a matching birthday with just 23 people in the room. It's amazing. It goes totally against intuition. And again, because people think, well, wait a minute, there's 365 days. We got to be putting at least 180 people in here to start having any kind of a chance to have 2 of them match. But that's not accounting for all of the combinations. So what I did up here is came up with the number of combinations. If you have 23 people in a room, there are 253 different combinations of birthdays, which is, in fact, far more than the 50% mark for the days in a year. So we are very quickly approaching a high probability that we're going to start seeing matches. So look what happens as we start working down the list. With, let's go down to 35 people in the room. We've got an 81% chance that we're going to have 2 that have matching birthdays. You get 50 people in a room, you have a 98% chance that 2 will have a matching birthday. So there's some fun ways you can experiment with this. If you're in a classroom, find out the birthdays of everybody. If you have at least 23 people, chances are you're going to see 2 that have a match. Pull up the US presidents, far more than 23. How many have matching birthdays? Pull up maybe a football team roster and see how many of them have matching birthdays. And so you're going to start realizing it doesn't take a lot of people to start having matching birthdays, even though there's 365 days in a year. And the answer again is because of the number of combinations. And that's the thing that people overlook. So now go back to your Fibonacci retracements. And I'm not picking on Fibonacci. I kind of am because so many people use it, and I think this is complete garbage when it comes to the stock market. Love the Fibonacci numbers, but I think they have no application for the stock market. But people think that they do because they'll say, well, look, it hit here and it hit right here, exactly on that line. And then it supported right here and right here. That's amazing. It even supported down here. But again, you've got 9 different lines here, and that's assuming we don't have Fibonacci projections in here. We've got 9 different lines that can be approached from above or below. We have 18 different levels. And so when you start looking at all of the possible combinations, it actually turns out to be far more likely that you're going to have matches than not have matches. So the main thing to take from this is I'm not saying to not use your technicals, but they can be a mild form of assistance. You're still better off with your hedges, rolls, morphs, strategies, scaling in, scaling out, as opposed to thinking that you've got some kind of a crystal ball. The main reason that a lot of these technicals look like they are some sort of a crystal ball is because people overlook the number of combinations or the possibilities that could exist when you're looking at 252 trading days times 6.5 hours per day and all of the combinations that are possible. And for anyone who'd like to learn more about the art and science of options trading, please check out the Alpha Trader course, Strategy Lab, and a Candlesticks and Technical Analysis course. It's all at optionsatoz.com. Also, please join us on Options A to Z's Facebook trading group, and you can find a link in the description below.